Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a moment in American history when the very fabric of the nation felt stretched, really stretched to its breaking point.
Yeah, tough time.
A time when scandal had just eroded trust and a really divisive war had torn us apart. This is a
No.
period President Ford himself called a long national nightmare.
A powerful phrase.
And then a seemingly ordinary man, a quiet legislator from Michigan, steps into the highest office, not by winning a single vote for either the presidency or vice presidency, but through this extraordinary twist of fate.
Completely unprecedented.
Exactly. Today, we're diving deep into the life and presidency of Gerald Ford, the only person to ever assume the chief executive role under such, well, unique circumstances.
What's truly compelling about Ford's story, I think, is how he stepped into that breach. He sort of embodied a sense of stability and normalcy right when the nation desperately needed it.
A steady hand, maybe?
Precisely. Our source material, a detailed Wikipedia entry and various historical accounts it draws upon, offers a really comprehensive look at his journey. It's a remarkable narrative, really. It reveals how his character, which was forged through a challenging childhood, distinguished military service, and decades in the House, kind of prepared him for the immense burden he would unexpectedly inherit.
So, not quite the accidental president, people sometimes think.
Well, accidental in how he got there, maybe, but perhaps not accidental in terms of his preparedness for that specific moment. We'll explore his surprising background, the defining decisions of his brief but remarkably impactful tenure, and his enduring, often underappreciated legacy. If you connect this to the bigger picture, you'll see how his personal integrity and pragmatic approach were, well, almost perfectly suited to begin healing a fractured nation.
Okay. Our mission today, then, is to unearth those crucial nuggets of knowledge about a man thrust into the spotlight during one of America's most turbulent periods. You'll discover not just what he did, but why his particular brand of leadership was so pivotal, how he navigated a deeply skeptical public, and how his legacy still offers profound insights into what true duty and quiet courage can look like.
Definitely. It's a story with layers.
Prepare to uncover the layers of a story that often goes unnoticed.
The formative years. An unexpected path to leadership.
Let's start at the very beginning of Gerald Ford's life, and it's, well, quite a remarkable origin story. He wasn't even born Gerald Ford.
That's right.
He entered the world as Leslie Lynch King Jr. on July 14, 1913 in Omaha, Nebraska. And his early life was marked by an event that, looking back, seems to have profoundly shaped his calm and steady demeanor. It sort of lays a foundational piece for understanding the man he became.
It really does. And this raises an important question. How does one's personal origin story, especially one involving family trauma like this, influence their public persona and ultimately their leadership style?
How did it play out for Ford?
Well, his parents, Dorothy Ayre Gardner and Leslie Lynch King Sr., they separated just 16 days after his birth.
Wow, 16 days. That's incredibly fast.
It is. And his biological father, Leslie Lynch King Sr., he was a wool trader, but he had a deeply troubling history of domestic abuse.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Just days after Ford's birth, according to biographers, Leslie King Sr. actually brandished a butcher knife, threatening to kill his wife, their infant son Ford himself, and the nursemaid.
That's terrifying.
Absolutely horrific. Ford himself later told people that his father had first physically abused his mother on their honeymoon simply because she smiled at another man.
So this was a pattern.
It seems so. This incredibly traumatic and dangerous environment led his mother, Dorothy, to flee with the infant Ford. They initially stayed with relatives in Oak Park, Illinois, before eventually relocating to the more stable home of her parents in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Grand Rapids, that became his home, right?
Exactly. She gained full custody when the divorce was finalized in December 1913. Ford's paternal grandfather did provide child support for a while, until shortly before his own death in 1930.
Okay.
After living with her parents for about 2.5 years, Dorothy found stability again and remarried Gerald Rudolph Ford on February 1st, 1917. This stepfather, whom Ford absolutely adored and later called a magnificent person, gave him his name. He was basically known as Gerald Rudolph Ford Jr. from that point on.
So that's where the name came from.
Right. The name change, including the anglicized spelling Rudolph, was formally done when he was 22 in December 1935. Though, interestingly, he was never formally adopted by his stepfather.
Huh. But he clearly saw him as his father.
Oh, absolutely. Ford often described his upbringing after his mother remarried as superb. And you can see how this deep appreciation for stability, for a strong and supportive foundation, despite such a tumultuous and even dangerous start, really offers significant insight into the man he became.
How so?
Well, he clearly valued peace, order, and finding common ground qualities that would really define his most challenging moments later in public service. That desire for stability seems deeply rooted.
So, from this profoundly complex family history, he moves towards becoming, well, the ultimate Boy Scout. Ford achieved the highest rank, Eagle Scout, in August 1927. That's a rare distinction, and he uniquely holds it among U.S. presidents.
It really is unique.
It certainly speaks volumes about his character, right? Demonstrating early on a commitment to duty, self-reliance, and personal development. This wasn't just a childhood hobby. It feels like a testament to values that would stick with him.
Indeed. The discipline and values learned in scouting, trustworthiness, loyalty, helpfulness, courage, cleanliness, all those things, they would have profoundly reinforced a sense of civic duty and preparedness.
And that thread continues, doesn't it, into his athletic career?
It does. At Grand Rapids South High School, he wasn't just a participant. He was a star athlete and the football captain. He even made the all-city team in 1930. So you see these early signs of leadership and an ability to excel under pressure, to work within a team structure. Those are incredibly valuable traits in any field, but especially in politics.
And he carried that athletic spirit right into college at the University of Michigan, became a standout center and linebacker for the Wolverines.
A real star.
And what's truly remarkable is he helped them achieve 2 undefeated seasons and national titles in 32 and 33. That shows a man who understands teamwork, how to be a part of a winning effort. But it's a specific moment in his senior year, 1934, that really showcases his moral compass. This is where you see the true character of Gerald Ford start to emerge, I think.
Absolutely. And this raises an important question about personal integrity versus institutional pressure, especially back then with widespread racial prejudice.
What happened?
Well, during his senior year, a big controversy developed. Georgia Tech threatened to cancel a scheduled game if Michigan played its black player, Willis Ward.
Seriously, they demanded that.
They did, and the university, unfortunately, succumbing to the pressure, capitulated. They agreed to keep Ward out of the game.
That's awful. How did Ford react?
Well, Ford was Ward's best friend on the team, his roommate on road trips, and he reportedly threatened to quit the team in protest.
Wow. He was willing to walk away.
That's the story. A profound personal stand against injustice. He only ultimately agreed to play when Ward himself, recognizing the larger situation, personally asked him to. It showed loyalty to his friend while still navigating this undeniably unjust system.
So Ward asked him to play.
Yes. And their assistant coach, Benny Oosterbein, observed that Ford and Ward played their hearts out in one particularly tough game, despite all the controversy beforehand, and his teammates later voted Ford their most valuable player. One assistant coach even noted that Jerry was one guy who would stay and fight in a losing cause.
That spirit. Fighting a losing cause. That seems prophetic.
Doesn't it? That unwavering commitment to principles, to fight for what's right, even against adverse odds and personal cost, that would serve him exceptionally well later in life, particularly when he faced immense public backlash over a profoundly unpopular decision like the Nixon pardon.
A through line in his character.
Exactly. And in honor of his athletic accomplishments and his later political career, Michigan retired his number 48 jersey in 1994. A lasting tribute.
So after Michigan, he gets these offers from the pros, right? The Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers. Big time.
Yeah, the NFL came calling.
But he turned them down. Instead, he took this rather surprising detour on his path to law school. He took a job in September 1935 as the boxing coach and assistant varsity football coach at Yale University.
Boxing coach, yeah. And football.
And he even spent a summer in 36 as a seasonal park ranger at Yellowstone. Canyon Station. Sounds like quite the adventure. Speaks to his independence.
It does. And the historical irony here is that his dedication to getting into Yale Law was initially denied because of those full-time coaching commitments.
Oh, really? They wouldn't let him in at first.
Right. He was denied admission in 1935. But he didn't give up. He spent the summer of 37 as a student back at the University of Michigan Law School, just showing his persistence.
He was determined.
Absolutely. He was eventually admitted to Yale Law School in the spring of 1938. And that same year, he was promoted to junior varsity head football coach at Yale. So he's balancing full-time coaching and his legal studies.
How did he manage that?
Well, he also worked as a model.
A model, Gerald Ford.
Yep. He initially worked with the John Robert Powers Agency, then invested in the Harry Conover Agency, and modeled with them until 1941.
I had no idea.
It's a detail, but it paints a picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A multifaceted, ambitious, incredibly resourceful guy, not afraid to take unconventional routes to support himself through education, shows real practical determination.
And even before finishing law school, he dipped his toes into politics.
A little bit. While at Yale Law, he joined a student group petitioning for the 1939 Neutrality Act. That movement actually inspired the America First Committee, the big non-interventionist group wanting to keep the U.S. out of World War II.
Interesting. So he was initially leaning towards isolationism?
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Then, in the summer of 1940, he worked for the Republican presidential campaign for Wendell Willkie. So he got some hands-on experience in national politics before Pearl Harbor just changed everything for him and for the country.
Right.
He graduated in the top third of his class in 1941, got admitted to the Michigan bar, opened a law practice with a friend, and then the world changed.
Absolutely. His involvement with America First really highlights that isolationist sentiment at the time. But as you said, the war itself transformed him entirely, from isolationist to converted internationalist.
From naval officer to congressman's congressman, a steady ascent.
The attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, a profound shock. And it fundamentally shifted Ford's perspective, didn't it?
Completely. It propelled him from that isolationist stance to what he called a converted internationalist.
And this conversion led him straight to enlist in the Navy. His service was quite decorated, showcasing that deep commitment to national duty when it really mattered.
Indeed. He received a commission as ensign in the U.S. Naval Reserve in April '42. After active duty and instructor training, he was sent to Navy pre-flight school in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
What did he do there?
He was one of about 83 instructors, teaching elementary navigation, ordnance, gunnery, first aid, military drill. And he coached various sports, too.
Busy guy.
Always. His dedication led to rapid promotions. Lieutenant junior grade in June '42, then full lieutenant in March '43. But he was eager for direct involvement, so he applied for sea duty.
He wanted to be in the action.
Exactly. In May '43, he was assigned to the pre-commissioning detachment for the new aircraft carrier USS Monterey. From its commissioning in June '43 until December '44, Ford served right there on the Monterey.
What were his roles?
Assistant navigator, athletic officer, and anti-aircraft battery officer. And during this time, the Monterey plunged right into the heart of the Pacific conflict.
Major battles.
Oh yes, with the 3rd and 5th Fleets. From securing Makin Island, fierce carrier strikes against Kavieng and Papua New Guinea, supporting landings at Kwajalein and Enitok. He was there.
Wow.
Also involved in carrier strikes in the Marianas, Western Carolines, Northern New Guinea, and culminating in the pivotal Battle of the Philippine Sea.
He saw a lot of action.
He really did. After an overhaul, aircraft from the Monterey launched strikes against Wake Island, participated in actions in the Philippines and Ryukyus, supported landings at Leyte and Mindoro. This was a man deeply actively engaged in the core war effort, experiencing the full intensity of naval warfare.
His service was undeniably extensive, but his most dramatic moment at sea wasn't actually against the enemy, was it? It was against nature itself. The USS Monterey got caught in Typhoon Cobra in December 1944.
That's right, a terrifying ordeal. And it really raises that question. How do moments of extreme crisis, even natural disasters, test and reveal true leadership and composure?
What happened during the typhoon?
Typhoon Cobra was incredibly destructive. It sank 3 destroyers, tragically killed over 800 men across the fleet. On the Monterey, the ship itself was damaged by a fire. It ignited when several aircraft tore loose from their cables and collided on the hangar deck.
Chaos. And Ford was right in the middle of it.
He was, serving as General Quarters Officer of the deck. During this chaos, he was given a critical and dangerous order: go to low deck and assess the raging fire.
He went down there.
He did. He executed the order safely, reported his findings back to the ship's commanding officer, Captain Stuart Ingersoll, and that directly contributed to the crew's success in containing the blaze.
Wow. Calm under pressure.
Remarkable, calm under immense pressure, and a willingness to put himself in harm's way for his duty. Qualities that would prove invaluable later in the Oval Office.
Definitely.
After that incident, the Monterey was declared unfit for service. Ford was detached, continued his service in other naval roles, and was honorably discharged in February '46 as a lieutenant commander. His extensive wartime service, highly decorated, including 9 campaign stars, really cemented his reputation as a man of courage, discipline, and unwavering commitment.
So he returns to Grand Rapids in '46. His worldview changed by the war, right?
Profoundly. That converted internationalist perspective propelled him into local Republican politics. And he eventually challenged an isolationist incumbent, Bartel J. Jonkman, for the House seat in Michigan's 5th Congressional District.
Was that expected to be an easy win?
Not at all. Ford himself recalled the skepticism, saying, "Nobody thought I could win. I ended up winning 2-1.
How did he do it?
His campaign style was incredibly personal and hands-on, visiting voters at their doorsteps, even catching them as they left the factories.
Down to earth.
Very. There's that famous story about a wager on a local farm that resulted in Ford spending 2 weeks milking cows after his victory. Shows that approachable demeanor.
Ah, I bet that went over well.
It did. And that genuine, hands-on style defined his remarkable 25 years in the House of Representatives from 1949 to 1973.
A quarter century.
Yep. And he became known among his colleagues as Congressman's Congressman.
What does that mean exactly?
It reflects deep respect, a reputation for modesty, and his exceptional ability to negotiate, to reconcile diverse viewpoints, rather than just pushing his own major legislation. He was a consensus builder.
Same as philosophy.
He described it as a moderate in domestic affairs, an internationalist in foreign affairs, and a conservative in fiscal policy. A balanced approach.
And that showed in his votes.
Clearly. He consistently voted for all the major civil rights acts of the era, 57, 60, 64, 68, supported the 24th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, a clear commitment to equality.
Interesting. Did he ever aim higher back then, like Senate or governor?
He declined offers for those in the early 50s. His ambition was singular. Speaker of the House. He called it the ultimate achievement, a goal he apparently set pretty early on in his congressional career.
It's fascinating that his ultimate goal was speaker, not president. What does that tell us about his political priorities, his approach to power?
That's a great question. It tells us a lot, I think. Ford was fundamentally a legislative creature. He was deeply invested in the mechanics of Congress, the art of compromise, the slow, deliberate process of making laws.
Right.
The speakership is all about managing personalities, crafting consensus, a role perfectly aligned with his negotiator and reconciler style. The presidency, with its executive power, often solitary decision-making. That was a different beast altogether, one he didn't actively seek.
Makes sense. And then came another unexpected call, putting him on the national stage in a big way, the Warren Commission.
Right, connecting him directly to one of the most tragic events in American history, the JFK assassination.
How did he get involved?
President Lyndon B. Johnson appointed him in November 1963. It was a testament to his reputation for integrity and diligence. This special task force was created to investigate the assassination.
What was Ford's specific role?
He was assigned to prepare a biography of the accused assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. Meticulous research into a deeply troubled individual. And notably, he also interviewed Jack Ruby, Oswald's killer.
He met Ruby.
Yes, brought him into direct contact with key figures in the tragedy. Now here's where it gets really interesting. According to a 1963 FBI memo, only released publicly in 2008,
Okay.
Ford was apparently in direct contact with the FBI throughout his time on the commission. He reportedly relayed information about the panel's activities to the deputy director, Cartha Deloach.
So he was feeding information to the FBI.
It seems like there was an unofficial but direct line of communication. It reveals a complex layer to his involvement, suggesting maybe an awareness of the behind-the-scenes pressures and machinations, even for someone with his integrity.
Did he ever talk about that?
Not directly about the FBI contact, as far as I know. He later staunchly defended the Commission's overall conclusions in the preface to his own book on the topic. But that memo adds a nuanced dimension to his role.
Definitely something to think about. Ford's political star kept rising, though. He became House Minority Leader in 1965.
Right, spurred on by a group known as the Young Turks, which included figures like a young congressman from Illinois named Donald Rumsfeld.
Rumsfeld, future connections there.
Many future connections. As minority leader, Ford was a vocal critic, challenging LBJ's expansive Great Society programs and even his handling of the Vietnam War.
How did he do that?
Well, he and Senator Everett Dirksen of Illinois had this popular, regularly televised series of press conferences. They offered Republican alternatives to Johnson's policies. The press jokingly called it the Ev and Jerry Show.
Like a political comedy duo?
Sort of. It highlighted their effective opposition.
Yeah.
President Johnson, though, was famously frustrated by Ford's criticism.
Oh, yeah. What did LBJ say?
Well, the famous quip was that Ford had played too much football without a helmet and was so dumb he can't fart and chew gum at the same time.
Wow. Did you really say that?
He did, though the press sanitized it, of course, to the more palatable can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Still pretty rough.
It is. A
Yeah.
humorous anecdote, but it also vividly highlights the intense partisan friction of the era. Even though Ford himself maintained a reputation for fairness and being generally inoffensive within the House.
But despite the political sparring, he still got things done.
Absolutely. His leadership was instrumental in building bipartisan coalitions. For example, he helped shepherd through Congress several of Nixon's key proposals, like the landmark National Environmental Policy Act and the Revenue-Sharing State and Local Fiscal Assistance Act of '72.
So he could work across the aisle.
Showcased his ability to negotiate and reconcile, even while challenging the majority party. A critical skill, especially given what was coming.
And then, 1973, everything changes in an instant. Vice President Spiro Agnew resigns amid scandal, an unprecedented vacancy,
A huge moment.
and the unanimous advice to President Nixon for a replacement. It wasn't a prominent senator or well-known governor, it was Gerald Ford, the quiet legislator.
It really was unanimous, across the political spectrum. Ford initially, and rather ironically, told his wife Betty that the vice presidency would be a nice conclusion to his career. He had absolutely no idea what was about to unfold.
He thought it was the endgame.
Totally. He was nominated on October 12, 1973. Became the first person ever appointed VP under the 25th Amendment presidential nomination, congressional confirmation.
And the confirmation was easy.
Well, overwhelming. Senate 92-3, House 387-35. He took the oath on December 6th, becoming vice president just as the Watergate scandal was consuming the nation. A crisis he had zero part in creating.
Talk about walking into a firestorm.
Exactly. Then, August 1st, 1974, Chief of Staff Alexander Haig contacts Ford with a chilling message. Tells him to prepare for the presidency.
Haig told him Nixon was going down.
Pretty much. Haig revealed a new tape had devastating evidence against Nixon, warned it would likely lead to impeachment or resignation. Ford recalled telling Betty, his wife, with this profound sense of foreboding, "I don't think we're ever going to live in the vice president's house."
Wow. He knew.
He knew this truly was his direct, utterly unprecedented pathway to the White House, a moment of fate, not ambition, that catapulted this man of legislative temperament into the nation's highest executive office.
The weight of the Oval Office, healing a nation divided.
August 9th, 1974. Richard Nixon resigns. Gerald Ford automatically assumes the presidency. History made right there the only person to become chief executive without ever being elected to either office.
An astonishing moment in American history.
He walks into a White House in crisis, and his very first words to the nation, delivered live from the East Room, they just perfectly captured the mood, didn't they? Offering a much-needed balm to a wounded country.
They really did. He spoke directly to the nation, acknowledged the immense peculiarity of his position, famously said he was a Ford, not a Lincoln, a humble recognition of the weight of the office and the giants who came before.
Right, managing expectations.
Exactly. But then he famously declared that our long national nightmare is over.
Such a powerful line.
It immediately aimed to lower the temperature. The nation was reeling from Watergate, from Vietnam. America was disillusioned. Trust in government had plummeted to historic lows. It was a monumental task for a country that felt utterly fractured.
You could see his background coming through.
Absolutely. In that moment, you can clearly see his ingrained negotiator and reconciler identity, honed over 25 years in the House, scaling up to the national stage. He wasn't there to deepen divisions, he was there to mend them, setting a tone of healing and stability that was so desperately needed. He recognized the integrity of the presidency itself needed restoring.
So, just a few weeks later, Ford moves to fill the VP spot he just vacated. He nominates former New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller.
Right, a prominent figure.
But that nomination wasn't exactly smooth sailing, was it? Led to some extensive hearings in Congress.
No, it wasn't smooth. Rockefeller's nomination underwent extended and, frankly, sometimes embarrassing hearings, primarily due to revelations that he had made large financial gifts to senior aides, including the powerful Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger.
Gifts, like cash.
Significant gifts, yes. And while many conservative Republicans weren't thrilled with Rockefeller's more liberal political leanings.
Rockefeller Republicans, right.
Exactly. The majority ultimately voted for his confirmation. They recognized the need for stability, even though some conservatives, like Barry Goldwater, voted against him. It was a necessary first step for Ford to establish a functional executive team, restore some normalcy at the top.
Okay. But the truly defining moment of his early presidency, maybe his entire career, came just a month later, September 8th, 1974, the unilateral pardon of Richard Nixon.
The pardon, yeah.
Yeah.
A decision forever linked to his name. became both his greatest burden and, eventually for some, a testament to his courage.
It remains one of the most controversial decisions ever. What was Ford's internal calculus? Why do it? And how did he handle the immediate public outrage?
That's the crucial question, right? And it goes to the heart of Ford's leadership style. He issued Proclamation 4311, granting Nixon this full and unconditional pardon for any and all crimes he might have committed against the U.S. while president.
Full and unconditional, no strings attached.
None. And in a powerful, televised broadcast, Ford explained his reasoning. He said he felt the pardon was in the best interests of the country. He acknowledged the Nixon family's situation was a tragedy in which we all have played a part.
Taking some shared responsibility.
In a way. And he concluded with this profound statement of purpose. It could go on and on and on, or someone must write the end to it. I have concluded that only I can do that, and if I can, I must.
Wow. Taking it all on himself.
Exactly. But this immediately and controversially sparked accusations of a corrupt bargain.
The idea that Nixon resigned so Ford could become president and pardon him.
Precisely. That Ford's pardon was the payoff for Nixon's resignation. The public, already deeply disillusioned by Watergate, wanted accountability, not clemency.
And the reaction was fierce.
Immediate and fierce, his first press secretary, Gerald Ford, a close friend, resigned his post in protest almost immediately. A huge statement.
Resigned over the pardon.
Yep. A testament to the depth of the public and political outrage. The New York Times, in a scathing editorial, called it a profoundly unwise, divisive, and unjust act that, in one stroke, destroyed the new president's credibility as a man of judgment, candor, and competence.
Ouch, that's harsh.
Extremely. Ford himself later openly agreed that this controversy was a major reason he lost the 1976 election. He knew it would be unpopular, he absolutely knew. But he believed the ongoing legal saga of Nixon would just continue to consume the nation, preventing it from truly healing and moving forward. The country needed closure, in his view.
He took the hit for what he saw as the greater good.
That was his justification. Now, here's the interesting historical twist. In 2001, years later, he received the prestigious John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award for this very act.
The pardon, really?
Yes, and at the presentation, Senator Ted Kennedy, who had initially been a vocal opponent of the pardon, stated that history had ultimately proven Ford correct, recognized the act's long-term benefit to the nation.
Wow, quite a turnaround.
It really is. And after leaving office, Ford privately justified his decision in an interesting way. He carried a portion of a 1915 Supreme Court decision, Burdick v. United States, in his wallet.
What did it say?
It stated that accepting a pardon was tantamount to a confession of guilt. For Ford, this served as his personal, unspoken acknowledgement of Nixon's culpability. A fascinating insight into his private conviction versus his public duty.
So just days after that monumental, controversial pardon, Ford tackles another deeply divisive issue from the Vietnam War era. The fate of draft dodgers and deserters.
Right, another tough one.
He offered a conditional amnesty program, again aiming for reconciliation.
Yeah, this further demonstrates his consistent focus on healing national wounds, trying to move the country forward from a painful chapter. On September 16, 1974, he issued Presidential Proclamation 4313.
What did it do?
It introduced this conditional amnesty program. It required military deserters and Vietnam War draft dodgers, many of whom had fled to Canada or elsewhere, to reaffirm their allegiance to the U.S.
Okay, reaffirm allegiance.
Yeah.
And then...
In return, they'd be required to serve 2 years working in a public service job. Or, for those who'd already served some military time honorably but less than 2 years, they'd complete that 2-year service requirement.
So, earn their way back, essentially.
That was the idea. To manage this, he established a clemency board. It reviewed individual records, made recommendations for receiving a presidential pardon, or maybe a change in military discharge status.
A structured process.
Right. It was a pragmatic, balanced approach to a highly emotional issue, seeking a middle ground between punishment and full forgiveness. Even though a full, unconditional pardon for draft dodgers ultimately came later, under President Carter.
But Ford took the first step.
He did. It spoke to his desire to close the chapter on a war that had left such deep scars.
Now, he inherited Nixon's cabinet, right? A group largely shaped by his predecessor.
That's right. Walked into a team already in place.
But Ford quickly made it his own. He reorganized his top advisors in this decisive move that commentators memorably dubbed the Halloween Massacre in the fall of '75.
Yeah, quite the dramatic name.
It sounds like a clear signal of his intent to lead with his own vision, establish his own authority.
Absolutely. It highlights his desire to establish his own authority, implement his own vision, move decisively out of Nixon's shadow, and assert his mandate to govern.
Who did he replace?
Almost everyone from the inherited cabinet. He only kept Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and Secretary of the Treasury William E. Simon.
Kissinger stayed. That's significant.
Very. Among Ford's significant new appointments was William Coleman as Secretary of Transportation.
Coleman. What was notable about him?
Coleman was not only the second black man to serve in a presidential cabinet, after Robert C. Weaver, but also the first appointed in a Republican administration, a notable historical milestone.
Okay. Any other key figures?
Yes. Ford strategically placed people he trusted in important roles. He appointed George H.W. Bush as chief of the U.S. Liaison Office to China in '74, and later as director of the CIA in late '75.
Bush Senior rising star.
Definitely. Underscoring the trust Ford placed in these figures, and perhaps most tellingly, his transition chairman and first chief of staff, former Congressman Donald
Rumsfeld again.
was named by Ford as the youngest ever Secretary of Defense in 1975.
Youngest ever. Wow.
And a young Wyoming politician named Richard Cheney was chosen to replace Rumsfeld as the new White House Chief of Staff. Cheney later became the campaign manager for Ford's 1976 presidential campaign.
Rumsfeld, Cheney, Bush. Quite a lineup.
It really demonstrates Ford's astute ability to spot and cultivate talent, and the enduring influence of these appointments, as many of these individuals would go on to hold powerful positions in future administrations. It was Ford saying, "I'm in charge now."
But the political fallout from Watergate wasn't over, was it? It hit the Republicans hard in the midterms.
Oh, absolutely. The 1974 midterm elections, just months after Ford took office, were a disaster for the Republicans. It gave the Democrats a near two-thirds majority in both houses of Congress.
How bad was it?
The Democrats effectively leveraged voter dissatisfaction from Watergate. They took 49 seats from the Republicans in the House elections, boosted their majority to 291 out of 435 seats, just one shy of a two-thirds majority.
And the Senate.
The Democratic majority grew there, too, to 61 seats.
So what did that mean for Ford?
It created an incredibly challenging legislative environment. The immediate consequence was that the 94th Congress, taking office in '75, overrode the highest percentage of presidential vetoes since Andrew Johnson's presidency, way back after the Civil War.
Wow. So Congress could just block them.
Pretty much. It meant Ford would face an uphill battle to implement his domestic agenda, constantly navigating a hostile legislative landscape where his initiatives could be easily blocked or overridden. Even Ford's own reliably Republican House seat from Michigan was lost to a Democrat.
His own seat.
Yep, Richard Van Veen won it. Underscored the depth of the anti-Republican sentiment gripping the nation. It effectively meant Ford was going to have to be a master consensus builder, relying on his old House skills more than ever just to get anything done at all.
Navigating economic storms and shifting geopolitics.
Okay, so Ford's presidency starts under this cloud, and then he's immediately gripped by a domestic crisis, the economy. The worst since the Great Depression, right?
Yeah, exactly. Rampant inflation, a growing recession, this nasty combination people called stagflation.
Stagflation. Not good. His initial response was pretty memorable, if not entirely successful, that public campaign.
Right. To address this, one of his first acts was creating the Economic Policy Board. Then, in October '74, came that campaign, Win Whip Inflation Now.
The win buttons. I remember seeing pictures.
Exactly. He urged Americans to wear win buttons, voluntarily reduce spending and consumption. He believed controlling public spending was key to reining in inflation, which was over 12% then.
Did people buy into it?
Well, he gave a speech to Congress kicking it off, and over the next 9 days, amazingly, over 100,000 Americans mailed in Globplätzblos.
Really? People pledged?
They did. But, in hindsight, the WIN campaign was largely seen as more of a PR gimmick. It didn't really tackle the fundamental economic problems.
So it didn't work. What then?
His economic strategy then did this dramatic pivot. Initially, he proposed a one-year 5% income tax increase on corporations and the wealthy to curb inflation.
A tax hike during a recession.
That was the initial idea, yeah. But as the country sank deeper into recession, unemployment soared, hitting 9% by May '75. The worst since the Depression, he abruptly shifted course.
Okay. Shifted to what?
He then proposed a $16 billion tax reduction to stimulate growth, though he also called for spending cuts to avoid making inflation worse.
So a complete reversal, tax hike to tax cut.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
This abrupt switch earned him criticism for inconsistency. But he ultimately signed the larger $22.8 billion Tax Reduction Act of 1975, which Congress passed without the spending cuts he wanted.
And the result?
Significant federal deficits, around $53 billion for fiscal 75, $73.7 billion for 76. It shows a pragmatic, maybe sometimes inconsistent response to a rapidly changing, very difficult economic landscape. Trying to fight both inflation and recession at once is incredibly hard.
Yeah, no easy answers there. What about that famous New York City moment?
Yes. When New York City faced imminent bankruptcy in 1975, Mayor Abraham Bean pleaded for a federal bailout. Ford refused.
Famously refused.
Right, which prompted that iconic New York Daily News headline, Ford to City, drop dead.
Brutal headline.
It was a reference to a speech where Ford declared he would veto any bill calling for a federal bailout of New York City. Really underscored his fiscal conservative stance.
But he wasn't always about cutting. Didn't he sign something important for education?
That's right. Despite his budget concerns, Ford did sign the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975. That law established special education nationwide. He expressed strong support for full educational opportunities for our handicapped children. So a balance there, too.
Okay. Beyond the economy, Ford took stands on significant social issues, like the Equal Rights Amendment and abortion. These are still hot topics today.
Absolutely. And his positions, and even those within his own family, reveal a kind of nuanced perspective on a rapidly changing American social landscape.
What was his stance on the ERA?
He was an outspoken supporter, actively promoted it. In 1975, he issued Presidential Proclamation 4383, specifically designating August 26 as Women's Equality Day.
Women's Equality Day.
Yes. And in the proclamation, he explicitly said, "It is fitting and just to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment adopted by the Congress in order to secure legal equality for all women and men." A very clear public endorsement.
Okay, what about abortion? That was and is hugely divisive.
As president, his public stance was that he supported a federal constitutional amendment that would permit each one of the 50 states to make the choice. So basically, opposing the 1973 Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade, he wanted states to decide.
Right, but here's where it gets really interesting, right? His wife, Betty Ford.
Exactly. A remarkable difference of opinion emerged right within the first family. His own wife, Betty Ford, publicly expressed a strikingly different view.
What did she say?
During a 60 Minutes interview in August 1975, she stated unequivocally that Roe v. Wade was a great decision.
Wow. Publicly disagreeing with the president, her husband, on such a huge issue.
It was quite unusual for the time, yeah. Really highlighted the evolving social norms. And even more, Ford himself would later identify as pro-choice in his post-presidency.
He changed his mind later.
Seems like a personal evolution, yeah. Reflecting a complex and shifting position on one of America's most divisive social debates.
Fascinating. Another major domestic challenge during his administration, one that really resonates today, was the swine flu outbreak in 1976.
Ah, yes, the swine flu scare.
The response, a mass vaccination program, was unprecedented. Highlights the tough choices leaders face with potential pandemics.
It really does. In February 76, an Army recruit at Fort Dix mysteriously died. 4 others were hospitalized. Health officials quickly announced swine flu H1N1, jumped from pigs to humans, was the cause.
And the reaction?
Public health officials urged this ambitious, proactive mass vaccination program. Target every single person in the United States.
Vaccinate everyone.
That was the push from the health officials. The Ford administration pressed for it. To build public confidence, Ford and his family were publicly vaccinated before cameras in October, right before the election.
Did it work? Did everyone get vaccinated?
Well, it was plagued by delays, PR problems. But some 25% of the population, about 40 million Americans, were vaccinated before the program was ultimately canceled in December 76.
Why was it canceled?
The anticipated epidemic never fully materialized, and there were reports of some negative side effects, like Guillain-Barré syndrome, linked to the vaccine.
So a bold move, but controversial.
Very. A bold, proactive, but ultimately controversial public health initiative. Highlighted the difficult, high-stakes decisions leaders face trying to mitigate a potential pandemic, often with incomplete information, under intense public scrutiny. Acting swiftly, despite uncertainties, reflects that pressure to protect public health, even at potential political cost.
Okay, let's shift to foreign policy. Ford largely continued Nixon's policy of détente, right? Easing Cold War tensions with the Soviets and China.
Yes, he maintained that course. He reinforced the thawing relationship with China, which Nixon had started, with his own personal visit there in December 1975, building on that diplomacy.
And with the Soviet Union.
The key achievement was signing the Helsinki Accords in 1975, along with the Soviets and other European nations.
The Helsinki Accords. Why were they significant?
They laid the crucial framework for Helsinki Watch. That was an independent NGO created to monitor compliance with human rights provisions in the Accords. It later evolved into the internationally renowned Human Rights Watch.
So it linked security and human rights?
Exactly. A significant step in the Cold War towards recognizing human rights as an international issue, not just an internal affair, slowly chipping away at Soviet repression.
What else on the international front?
He also attended the inaugural meeting of the G7 industrialized nations initially, the G5 in 1975, and he secured Canada's membership, emphasized his belief in international cooperation, multilateral solutions, a more collaborative approach.
But not all his foreign policy decisions were aimed at cooperation or universally praised, right?
Yeah.
There was some controversial stuff, too.
Definitely. Some proved highly contentious. In November 1975, Ford adopted National Security Study Memorandum 200, or NSSM 200, as official U.S. policy.
NSSM 200, what was that about?
It was a directive explicitly aimed at global human population control.
Population control, why?
Well, not primarily for humanitarian reasons, according to the document itself. The stated goal was to protect American economic and military interests.
How would population control do that?
The memorandum argued that unchecked population growth in developing countries could lead to those nations gaining more global political power. And critically, it posed a risk to accessing foreign natural resources needed by American businesses. It also expressed concerns that younger generations born would be prone to anti-establishment behavior, increasing political instability.
So it's strategic, not just about helping people.
The plan did mention development and improvements in the quality of life of the poor, but it explicitly stated these projects were primarily for other reasons, revealed a clear strategic rather than purely altruistic motivation, highlights how national security interests intertwined with global social policies during the Cold War.
Yeah, it's pretty stark. And speaking of controversial, what about Indonesia and East Timor? That's a really dark chapter.
It is. The historical irony here is profound. As South Vietnam fell to communist forces, the Ford administration saw anti-communist Indonesia, led by President Suharto, as an absolutely essential bulwark against communism spreading further in Southeast Asia.
So Indonesia was a key ally.
A crucial one, in their view. And unfortunately, this strategic priority overshadowed human rights concerns, despite clear intelligence about Indonesia's impending invasion of East Timor and the subsequent genocide.
They knew it was coming.
The intelligence was there, yet Ford and Secretary Kissinger met with President Suharto in Jakarta just one day before the invasion in December 1975.
What happened at that meeting?
They assured Suharto that U.S. relations with Indonesia would remain strong, regardless of what Indonesia did in East Timor. They basically said the U.S. would not object to the annexation.
They gave him a green light.
Effectively, yes. And the U.S. continued providing significant economic and military support to Indonesia throughout this period, support that enabled an action that, by some estimates, killed nearly a third of East Timor's population.
A third? That's horrifying.
It is. It highlights the complex, often morally ambiguous decisions made under the banner of Cold War realpolitik. Strategic alliances and perceived stability were prioritized over the sovereignty and human rights of a smaller nation. A sobering reminder of the compromises made.
Wow. Okay, the Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean also presented crises, right? Cyprus, Arab-Israeli tensions.
Constant hotspots. The Turkish invasion of Cyprus in July 74, involving one NATO member invading a neighbor, created immense strain within the alliance.
How did the U.S. respond?
Well, Greece withdrew from NATO's military structure in protest. The U.S. Senate and House overwhelmingly voted to halt military aid to Turkey. But Ford, deeply concerned about damaging Turkish-American relations and weakening NATO's Eastern Front, vetoed those bills.
He vetoed cutting off aid to Turkey?
Twice. He feared it would impede negotiations in Cyprus. A compromise was eventually accepted to continue aid under specific conditions, but U.S. military aid to Turkey was suspended for a time in February 75. It really highlighted the executive-legislative friction on foreign policy, especially after Watergate.
Congress pushing back.
Exactly. And in the Arab-Israeli conflict, despite the ceasefire after the 73 Yom Kippur War, Kissinger's intensive shuttle diplomacy wasn't making much progress.
Ford got involved.
He got frustrated, considered Israeli tactics as stalling. He wrote, "They frustrated the Egyptians and made me mad as hell." During one of Kissinger's shuttles in March 75, a last-minute reversal by Israel prompted Ford to send a strongly worded cable to Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin,
What did it say?
expressed profound disappointment and warned failure would have a far-reaching impact. Ford then initiated a reassessment of United States policy, which meant suspending new arms agreements with Israel for 6 months.
Suspending arms to Israel. That's a big move.
Huge, led to an American-Israeli war of nerves. Ford experienced a real shock when 76 U.S. senators urged him to respond to Israel's aid request anyway.
More congressional pushback.
Significant intrusion into presidential foreign policy prerogatives, reflecting that post-Watergate curb on executive power. Ultimately, after much bargaining and pressure, the Sinai Interim Agreement, Sinai II, was signed in September 75, and aid to Israel resumed. But it showed that shifting balance of power.
And then, of course, Vietnam. The final painful end came under Ford just 9 months into his presidency.
A moment of immense emotional weight for the nation. With the Paris Peace Accords in '73, American offensive operations had officially ended under Nixon. But Nixon had made private promises to defend South Vietnam if the North violated the Accords.
And the North did violate them.
In December '74, after Ford took office, North Vietnamese forces invaded Phuoc Long province, testing the waters. Ford urgently requested Congress approve $722 million in aid for South Vietnam, funds promised by Nixon.
Did Congress approve it?
No. Congress, reflecting deep war weariness and a desire to just close this chapter, overwhelmingly rejected the request. Senator Jacob Javits famously declared, "Not one nickel for military aid."
Wow. That basically sealed South Vietnam's fate.
Pretty much. South Vietnamese President Thieu resigned on April 24, '75, publicly blaming the U.S. lack of support for the imminent fall of his country.
And then Ford made that speech.
Just 2 days later, April 23, '75, Ford delivered that historic speech at Tulane University, announced the Vietnam War was over as far as America is concerned, met with thunderous applause.
A moment of closure, maybe.
For America, perhaps. His administration then oversaw Operation Frequent Wind. That Ford's administration passed the Indochina Migration and Refugee Assistance Act, appropriated $455 million to help settle 130,000 Vietnamese refugees in the U.S. in '75, with thousands more following. It marked the painful, decisive end of that long, divisive chapter, allowed the nation to finally begin to heal, a process Ford desperately sought.
But the very next month after Saigon fell, another international incident tested Ford's resolve, the Mayaguez incident.
Right. Swift, dramatic, and ultimately costly. Many saw it as a test of American willpower post-Vietnam.
What happened?
In May '75, shortly after the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia, they seized the American merchant ship Mayaguez in international waters.
An act of aggression.
Coming so soon after Vietnam, it prompted a forceful response from Ford, determined to demonstrate American resolve. He quickly dispatched Marines for a rescue operation.
Did the rescue work?
Well, there was a tragic misstep. The Marines landed on the wrong island, faced unexpectedly stiff resistance, and crucially, unknown to the U.S. forces at the time, the Mayaguez crew was actually already being released.
Oh no, so the fighting was unnecessary.
Largely, yes. The operation resulted in significant casualties. 2 transport helicopters shot down, 41 U.S. servicemen killed, 50 wounded. Around 60 Khmer Rouge soldiers also died.
41 Americans killed, for a crew already being released.
Tragic. Despite the losses, though, the operation was widely perceived as a success back in the U.S. Boosted Ford's approval ratings by 11 points. A nation eager for a show of strength.
Why respond so forcefully if they suspected it might be a mistake?
Good question. Internal discussions analyzed by historian Andrew Gawthorpe indicate Ford's national security team actually understood it was likely a local, accidental provocation by an immature Khmer government, not some big Soviet plot.
So why the massive force?
They felt an overwhelming need to respond forcefully. The rationale was to deter further provocations by other communist countries in Asia, make a powerful statement about American resolve after Vietnam, show the U.S. wasn't a paper tiger, it was a projection of strength meant to counter the perception of American weakness.
Under siege in the battle for re-election.
It's almost unbelievable. But Gerald Ford was the target of 2 assassination attempts during his presidency.
Both in September 1975, just weeks apart.
Yeah, just weeks apart. These events really highlighted the intense, volatile political climate he was navigating. Must have placed an immense personal burden on him and his family.
Absolutely. It truly highlights the immense personal danger Ford faced. The first attempt was in Sacramento, California, September 5th. Lynette Squeaky Fromm, a follower of Charles Manson.
Squeaky Fromm, from the Manson family.
The very same. brazenly pointed a .45 caliber handgun directly at Ford, pulled the trigger at point-blank range.
My God, what happened?
Fortunately, as she pulled the trigger, Secret Service agent Larry Bundorf quickly intervened, grabbed the gun, prevented a tragedy.
He stopped her just in time.
Just in time. Frum was taken into custody, later convicted of attempted assassination, sentenced to life, eventually paroled in 2009.
And the Secret Service reaction?
Immediate. They changed protocol right away, insisting on keeping presidents at a more secure distance from anonymous crowds. This adjustment may very well have saved Ford's life just 17 days later.
The second attempt.
September 22nd in San Francisco. Sarah Jane Moore, standing in a crowd across the street, fired a .38 caliber revolver at him.
She fired. Did she hit him?
No, the shot narrowly missed Ford by a few feet. Before she could fire a second round, a retired Marine in the crowd, Oliver Sipple, heroically grabbed at the gun and deflected her shot.
A bystander saved him.
Yes. The second bullet struck a wall about 6 inches above and to the right of Ford's head, ricocheted, slightly wounded a taxi driver nearby.
Incredible. What happened to Moore?
She was also sentenced to life, paroled in 2007. These harrowing events are just a stark reminder of the constant personal danger faced by a president during such a turbulent period, forced a reevaluation of presidential security that still influences things today.
Unbelievable. Okay, despite all the political turmoil, the economic woes, even these terrifying threats, Ford made one significant Supreme Court appointment during his term.
That's right, and it had an interesting backstory connected to his own congressional past.
Who did he appoint?
In 1975, he appointed John Paul Stevens as an Associate Justice, replacing the retiring Justice William O. Douglas.
John Paul Stevens, long-serving justice. What's the backstory?
Well, the historical irony is this. Ford, during his time as House Republican leader, had actually led efforts to have Justice William O. Douglas impeached.
He tried to impeach the guy Stevens replaced.
Exactly, making his eventual appointment of Douglas's replacement a deeply intriguing turn of events.
How did Stevens turn out? Was he a conservative pick?
Stevens, who'd been an appeals court judge, was confirmed. But he eventually disappointed some conservatives by frequently siding with the court's liberal wing on many key issues throughout his long tenure.
So not what they expected.
Perhaps not entirely. Nevertheless, in 2005, Ford publicly praised Stevens, said, "He has served his nation well, with dignity, intellect, and without partisan political concerns."
Respect for the institution.
It seems so. Demonstrates Ford's capacity for acknowledging the independence and integrity of the judiciary, even when outcomes might not align with his original expectations or his political base. A quality may be rare today.
Definitely. Okay, so as the 1976 presidential campaign approaches, Ford reluctantly agrees to run for a full term of his own, hoping to secure the office he inherited.
Right. He wanted to win it in his own right.
But first, he had to fend off this serious, surprisingly strong challenge from within his own party. Ronald Reagan.
Reagan, a formidable figure from the conservative wing, and he launched a significant challenge.
What were Reagan's criticisms of Ford?
Reagan and the conservatives hit Ford on what they saw as failures or compromises. His policies on ending the Vietnam War, his signing of the Helsinki Accords, which conservatives felt legitimized Soviet control over Eastern Europe, and his administration's negotiations over the Panama Canal, which many conservatives fiercely opposed ceding.
So a real ideological battle.
Very much so. Reagan launched his campaign in the fall of '75, managed to win numerous primaries, North Carolina, Texas, Indiana, California, showed a powerful conservative grassroots movement.
Did he almost beat Ford for the nomination?
He pushed Ford hard, but ultimately failed to secure a majority of delegates. Reagan withdrew from the race at the Republican convention in Kansas City, but not without making Ford sweat.
Did Ford have to make concessions to the conservatives?
Oh, yes. A significant one. To try and unify the party, he replaced his more liberal vice president, Nelson Rockefeller, with the conservative U.S. Senator Bob Dole of Kansas as his running mate.
Dole, trying to appease the Reagan wing.
Exactly. But even with Dole, Ford's campaign was plagued by this barrage of negative media. It cemented this unfair, somewhat clumsy public image.
The Chevy Chase stuff on Saturday Night Live.
Infamous. Chevy Chase's pratfalls, imitating Ford's real-life stumbles, which happened maybe twice on camera, became iconic. Ford himself later acknowledged those parodies affected the election to some degree, shows the power of satire in shaping perception.
And wasn't there that incident with the tamale?
Yes. The infamous tamale incident in April '76. Campaign stop, maybe in a rush, Ford bit into a tamale that was still wrapped in its corn shuck.
Oh dear. Culinary faux pas.
Made national news, contributed further to this image of Ford as maybe a bit of a bumbler. Highlights how minor, seemingly trivial incidents get amplified and weaponized during a campaign.
But wasn't there some positive stuff too? The bicentennial?
Yes, good point. His campaign did benefit from a wave of national pride during the U.S. bicentennial celebrations in '76. Ford presided over big events, fireworks in D.C., a state dinner for Queen Elizabeth II. He used these occasions to emphasize themes of national defense, reconciliation, fundamental American virtues, tried to project presidential stature.
The 1976 election also saw the return of televised presidential debates. First time since Kennedy-Nixon in 1960.
A huge deal. Ford became the first incumbent president to participate in a televised debate, set a precedent.
How did he do? Was it critical?
It proved to be critical. Jimmy Carter later attributed his victory directly to the debates, said they gave the viewers reason to think that Jimmy Carter had something to offer.
Was there a specific moment that hurt Ford?
Yes. The turning point, arguably, of the entire campaign came in the second debate. Ford made this significant, highly publicized gaffe.
What did he say?
He stated unequivocally, "There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration."
Wait, what? No Soviet domination? In 1976?
Exactly. He further asserted he didn't believe that the Poles consider themselves dominated by the Soviet Union.
That's factually incorrect.
Wildly so. Years later, Ford explained he intended to imply the Soviets would never crush the spirits of Eastern Europeans seeking independence. A much more nuanced point, completely lost in the blunt phrasing.
But the damage was done.
Oh, yeah. The awkwardness was visible. The questioner, Max Frankel, looked incredulous. The moment was widely seen as undermining Ford's credibility on foreign policy, especially among American ethnic communities with ties to Eastern Europe. Carter pounced on it, casting doubt on Ford's grasp of international affairs.
A major stumble.
Huge. In the end, Ford narrowly lost the election to Carter, got 48% of the popular vote, 240 electoral votes. Carter got 50.1% and 297 electoral votes.
So close.
Very close. But the loss solidified his unique place in history. The only person to serve as president without ever winning a national election for either office. A bitter end to a truly unexpected journey.
Post-presidency. Elder statesmen, unexpected friendships, and enduring legacy.
After leaving office, those corrupt bargain accusations surrounding the Nixon pardon, they eventually subsided, didn't they? Faded with time and reflection.
They did, largely. History offered more perspective. And interestingly, his successor, Jimmy Carter, began his own inaugural address by publicly praising Ford.
Carter praised Ford at his inauguration after that tough campaign.
Yes. Carter said, "For myself and for our nation, I want to thank my predecessor for all he has done to heal our land."
Wow, that's quite a statement.
It really is, and it marked not an end, but the beginning of this extraordinary, unexpected friendship between the two former political rivals.
Ford and Carter became friends, close friends.
Very close. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it's a profound testament to the power of forgiveness, mutual respect, finding common ground beyond fierce political rivalry.
How did that friendship develop?
It truly blossomed after Carter left office. It was largely catalyzed by a shared trip they took to the funeral of Egyptian President Anwar el-Sadat in 1981, a poignant moment of shared grief and reflection.
And it lasted.
Right until Ford's death in 2006. The Carters frequently visited the Ford's home in Rancho Mirage, California, for holidays, casual visits. They often co-chaired commissions together, too.
Working together after being rivals.
Yep. Like the National Commission on Federal Election Reform in 2001, the Continuity of Government Commission in 2002, demonstrated their ongoing commitment to public service, working collaboratively despite past political differences.
That's really something. What else did Ford do after the presidency?
Well, he was astute in his personal finances, invested successfully in oil with Marvin Davis, which secured an income for his children. He dedicated much time to Eisenhower Fellowships, serving as its president and later chairman, and he indulged his love of golf, often playing with his longtime friend, the comedian Bob Hope.
Ford and Bob Hope, golfing buddies.
Classic pair. He also established the Gerald R. Ford Institute of Public Policy at Albion College, his presidential library in Ann Arbor, and his presidential museum right there in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Securing his legacy.
Exactly. Not just monuments, but ways to advocate for education and public service, continuing to shape future generations with the principles he valued.
Now, Ford even considered another run in 1980, didn't he?
He did, briefly, hoping to, as he put it, exercise his image as an accidental president and win a term in his own right.
Why did he think about running then?
He believed, somewhat controversially at the time, that Ronald Reagan couldn't defeat Jimmy Carter. He thought Reagan was too conservative and would hand Carter a second term.
So he thought he had a better chance.
He did. He was strongly encouraged by figures like Henry Kissinger, Jim Rhodes of Ohio, Bill Clements of Texas. Ford explicitly stated he wanted to shed that accidental president label.
But he didn't run in the end.
No. On March 15, 1980, Ford announced he would forego a run, pledging to support the eventual nominee.
But then here's another fascinating what if. Reagan actually considered Ford as his running mate.
He did. After Reagan secured the nomination, there were serious talks about Ford joining the ticket as VP, a potential dream ticket to unify the party's moderate and conservative wings.
Why didn't it happen?
Well, negotiations between the Reagan and Ford camps at the Republican National Convention broke down. Ford conditioned his acceptance on this unprecedented co-presidency.
A co-presidency? What did that mean?
He demanded control over key executive appointments, like designating Kissinger as Secretary of State and Alan Greenspan as Treasury Secretary, essentially wanting veto power or significant control over major decisions.
Reagan rejected that.
Understandably, yes. It would have fundamentally altered the balance of presidential power. So Reagan picked George H.W. Bush instead.
Wow. A Ford-Reagan co-presidency? That's wild to imagine.
Isn't it? Despite that, Ford still appeared in a campaign commercial for the Reagan-Bush ticket, saying the country would be better served by a Reagan presidency.
But he still spoke his mind, even about that campaign.
Oh, yeah. Showing his independent thought, he even broke with Reagan during the campaign. On October 8, 1980, he publicly stated that former President Nixon's involvement in the campaign could negatively impact it. Said, "I think it would have been much more helpful if Mr. Nixon had stayed in the background."
Still willing to criticize, even when supporting the ticket.
Exactly. Reveals a man still deeply engaged, thinking critically about leadership, prioritizing what he saw as best, even if it meant challenging his own party strategy.
In his later years, Ford continued to make his voice heard, often breaking with conservative Republican orthodoxy on key issues. Showed remarkable independence.
He really did. And it raises that question, what compels a former president to speak out against prevailing party lines, often risking alienating their base?
What do you think it was for Ford?
It seems like a prioritization of principle over partisan loyalty, a commitment to what he believed was right for the country, regardless of the political cost.
What were some examples?
In April '91, he joined former presidents Nixon, Reagan, and Carter in a rare show of bipartisan unity supporting the Brady Bill for gun control.
Nixon, Reagan, Carter, and Ford, all for gun control.
Supporting the Brady Bill, yes. 3 years later, in '94, he again advocated for the assault weapons ban, alongside Carter and Reagan. Positions increasingly out of step with his party's conservative wing.
He also warned his party.
In '98, issued a clear warning against an ultra-conservative shift. Stated, if we get way over on the hard right of the political spectrum, we will not elect a Republican president. Urged the party to learn from the Democrats' past failures with ultra-liberal candidates.
And maybe his most surprising break.
Perhaps. In October 2001, he publicly stated that gay and lesbian couples ought to be treated equally, period.
Wow. In 2001, that was early for a prominent Republican.
Made him the highest-ranking Republican at the time to embrace full equality for LGBTQ+ individuals. He advocated for a federal amendment outlawing anti-gay job discrimination, hoped the GOP would reach out to gay and lesbian voters. Showcased a remarkable evolution in his personal views, a willingness to lead on social issues.
And even after his death, another revelation came out about Iraq.
Yes. In an embargoed interview with Bob Woodward, conducted in July 2004 but released after his death, it was revealed Ford disagreed very strongly with the George W. Bush administration's justification for the Iraq War.
He disagreed with the Iraq War.
Called it a big mistake, unrelated to U.S. national security. Indicated he would not have gone to war had he been president. These stances really highlight his unwavering independent thought, willingness to prioritize his beliefs over party loyalty, truly transcended typical political expectations.
Ford lived a remarkably long life, faced various health issues later on.
Yes. Knee surgery in '90, minor strokes during the 2000 Republican Convention, pneumonia in 2006, eventually got a pacemaker. His last public appearance was a poignant moment with President George W. Bush at his home in Rancho Mirage in April 2006.
When did he pass away?
He passed away peacefully on December 26, 2006 at his home, aged 93 years and 165 days. became the longest-lived U.S. president at the time, surpassing Ronald Reagan by 45 days.
Wow. Longest lived. And he was the last surviving member of the Warren Commission, too.
That's right. His passing was marked by a state funeral, lying in state in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, the 11th president to receive that honor.
Were there special details at the funeral reflecting his life?
Yes, several. A few selected Boy Scouts served as ushers inside the National Cathedral, reflecting his own Eagle Scout rank. And about 400 Eagle Scouts formed an honor guard during the funeral procession. A powerful symbol.
Connecting back to his youth.
Exactly. And in a deeply personal touch, one of the songs Ford himself selected for his procession was the University of Michigan fight song, The Victors, a favorite of his.
The Victors. At his funeral.
Yep. He even preferred it played during his presidency sometimes. The University of Michigan Marching Band played it one final time for his last ride from the Gerald Ford Airport in Grand Rapids. A poignant farewell, underscoring the journey of a man who served with quiet dignity, resilience, and that unwavering connection to his foundational principles and personal history. A leader who always returned to his roots. Outro.
So if we connect all this to the bigger picture, Ford's entire career, from his childhood challenges, that complex family history, to his unexpected rise to the presidency, even his post-presidency reflections, it reveals this unique blend: personal integrity, pragmatic adaptability, and a deep, unshakable commitment to national healing.
He really did step in at a crisis moment. He absolutely did. A moment of profound national crisis, America reeling from Watergate and Vietnam. And despite immense public skepticism, that raw controversy of the Nixon pardon, a bruising re-election campaign, he set the country on a path towards stability, often making deeply unpopular decisions he genuinely believed were necessary for the greater good, and absorbing the political fallout himself.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this? Gerald Ford's story isn't just about presidential history. It's really a powerful lesson in leadership. Leadership defined not by overt ambition or, flashy charisma, but by an unwavering sense of duty, profound integrity, and quiet courage.
Quiet courage is a good way to put it.
He literally stepped in and helped heal a nation. His presidency, often overlooked or maybe misunderstood, offers this powerful reminder that sometimes the most consequential leaders are those who simply strive to be, what was that Kissinger quote, as close to a normal human being as we'll ever get in that office.
Yeah, fascinating description.
He was a man of principle, forced into an impossible situation, who chose to do what he believed was right, regardless of the personal cost. It makes you wonder, in times of intense polarization and crisis like our own, what kind of accidental leader, grounded in integrity and a commitment to unity, might our current moment truly need? What qualities of his character, forged in those unexpected ways throughout his life, might be most valuable today? Something to think about.